you are. I thought I'd find you here. Come on. Do you remember how I promised I'd show you how I study Japanese all those months ago? You don't? Well, it's okay if you don't remember. I think you'll still have a great time anyway. Japanese is actually my specialization in university, so I mainly started studying it for school, but I've come to really appreciate the language and the culture because it constantly challenges me and it's brought me closer to my friends and to you. Konnichiwa, hajimemashite. Watashi no namae Raiza Nicole desu. Raiza to yobarende kudasai. Ateneo de Manila 大学生の3年生です。専攻は国際関係です。日本語を2年勉強しています。よろしくお願いします。
The most important thing in my Japanese language studies is my Genki. Genki is an integrated textbook series in elementary Japanese that's made for native English speakers. It utilizes a well-balanced approach by developing the 4 major language skill areas, which are listening, speaking, reading, and writing. Every lesson in Genki starts with a dialogue that contains the lesson's learning points. What I like to do is to read through it while highlighting what I understand and what I don't understand. And then I listen to the dialogue and try to follow along.
たけし君、今度の休み予定ある？
たけし君、今度の休み予定ある？
ゆいさんの長野の家に行こうと思っているんだけど、一緒に行かない？
My senseis have always drilled into me since I started learning Japanese is that vocabulary is the foundation of language learning. That's why it's really your responsibility to memorize it and familiarize yourself with your vocab. So for vocabulary, Genki provides around 50 to 60 new vocab words per lesson. I study these by writing it all down on my notes, and then I use Quizlet to memorize the lesson's vocabulary. However, I try not to limit myself, so I still try to study vocabulary as a whole by using Anki. And although I haven't been as consistent with using Anki, it really is better than Quizlet since it uses a spaced repetition system to help you memorize the terms in your long-term memory. At first, Anki is a little daunting and the user interface isn't really that nice, but once you get the hang of it, it can be very beneficial to your studies. Once I've memorized the vocabulary or even just familiarized myself with it, I then move on to grammar. Genki usually has around 5 to 7 new, easy-to-follow grammar points per lesson, and what I really like about it is that it thoroughly describes common mistakes or misconceptions of grammar points in the footnotes below each grammar point. And then I usually study grammar points with my sensei as I'm still attending one-on-one Japanese classes, but what I usually do is I read through the grammar and then I write my notes down while also taking note of questions or confusions that I might have so I can ask my sensei later on. A good tip for when you're writing down your notes is to fade out the English translations by using a lighter colored pen or a pencil. So this helps you put more focus on your Japanese instead of relying on the English translations. The grammar section of Genki also has expression notes and culture notes at the end, which is really helpful for when you're trying to understand the dialogue or when you want to understand how native Japanese speakers speak in casual form. And for self-learners, on the other hand, Tofugu.com has a really great grammar hub that helps you understand the nuances of Japanese grammar points when you're feeling confused or you're feeling lost, with no one there for you to ask. The second most important thing next to memorizing your vocab is practice. After learning all of your grammar points, it's essential that you practice what you've learned because it helps you understand and grasp the concepts better. I use my Genki workbook to practice, and it's been a habit to complete the corresponding workbook lesson of every grammar point that I learn, since my professors would always give bonuses if you diligently do your workbook. One thing that I really like from the Genki workbooks are the listening comprehension sections. Admittedly, these were the absolute bane of my existence because it can be really difficult, but it's really good practice. Aside from using my workbook, I also practice by trying to speak only Japanese with my friends, since I'm lucky enough to have friends who's studying the language at the same time as I am. Now, these conversations don't have to be necessarily deep or serious. It can be very silly as long as you're able to practice your grammar. Now for kanji, Genki has a reading and writing section that lists down all of the corresponding kanji that you would need to learn per lesson. I used to just not study kanji during my first 2 Japanese classes because it was way too hard, and I didn't really have enough time to study it because of the online setup. And I absolutely do not recommend doing that because being able to read and write kanji is just as crucial. I find that learning kanji is better for me when it's within context and it's applied, so I don't necessarily memorize the kanji list per lesson. What I do instead is to delve right in the reading practice section and highlight in yellow all of the words that I already understand, highlight in purple the ones that I'm not familiar with, and then highlight in a different color the kanji or even the vocabulary that I've already studied but couldn't remember. I also got the Kanji Look and Learn workbook for more practice, but I haven't really gotten around to using it yet. But from what I've seen so far, it's perfect for me who learns more from practice rather than memorization. It's also from the Genki series, so the structure is already something that I am familiar with, and it is already something that I know I like. For other resources, I like to use the N5 Nihongo Sou Matome textbook because it has really nice condensed lessons and practices. Even though the book promises to get you ready to take the N5 in a few weeks, I don't really recommend solely relying on just the book alone, since its strength lies on how it's structured and grouped kanjis and grammar points together. I've mainly used this for kanji practice since my sensei gets the homework that she gives me from this textbook, and overall, it's a really good additional resource for learning. I also have the Understanding Through Pictures 1000 Kanji that I have found through Jasmine Leia's YouTube videos. It's a thick and heavy book that has all of the kanji that you would need to learn through the N2 to N5 JLPT levels. The book has really good pictograms to help you remember kanji, and it also shows you related vocabulary words. I really like how it has these stroke and writing tips at the point section to help you refine your writing. Aside from books, I also like to use Todai, Easy Japanese News, which helps you read news articles in simple Japanese.
投げ銭は音楽やゲーム、飲食業界などさまざまな分野で活動するライバーと呼ばれる人が
It's really good for reading practice, especially since you can just tap on unfamiliar words to see their meaning. The articles are also categorized by the JLPT level of its vocabulary, which is a really good tool to have when you're doing reading practice. Wanikani is a great way to learn kanji since it also utilizes a spaced repetition system like Anki. Its kanji explanations are really funny and honestly sometimes insane at certain points, which is actually really great to help you remember better. Aside from learning kanji through wanikani, my favorite thing about it is the community center where you can find the book clubs. Here, the book clubs are divided by Japanese reading levels, and you can find a lot of books to read in Japanese depending on your level, and the community is amazing since there are already vocabulary lists for each book in the book club. These vocab lists has the kanji, the kana, the English translation, the page number, and even notes from your fellow members. Here you can see that the Shimoyuguchi bus sign has been written down on the list. Next is my favorite app of all time, which is Jisho. Jisho is a Japanese dictionary and it is available on all devices, which makes language learning incredibly easier. Jisho has everything that you could possibly need. It has all possible definitions of a word, all of its conjugations, and even the stroke order for each kanji. On the app, you can even look up kanji by writing it down, which is helpful for when you don't know how to read it yet. Lastly, it really helps to consume different media in the language that you're trying to learn, and I watch anime on Netflix with the Language Reactor Chrome extension. This used to be the Language Learning with Netflix extension, but now you can even use it for YouTube. It's a great way to learn, especially if you're watching slice of life animes like this one. In line with consuming media in your target language, I found that I really like to listen to Japanese music whenever I'm studying or doing chores, since it helps me be in the right headspace, and it also gives me such a high when I can recognize certain words in a song that I like.
That is how I study Japanese. So I kept my promise, and I hope that you enjoyed and found it helpful. Thank you for coming along. See you soon, okay? じゃあ、またね。